Hi guys, okay, so today I'm going to be making part 4 of my video series talking about the Dad Challenge podcast. And I'm kind of just going to be ad-libbing a little bit for this video and sharing my thoughts in kind of a free-flow way, so I apologize if it doesn't all come across as very polished, but I do just want to get my ideas out there and just maintain the momentum of how I have been feeling about this problematic YouTuber. So in this particular video, I want to talk about Josh's motives, why he's doing what he's doing, what he says are his motives, and then I want to look a little bit more deeply and look at what his true motives might be and what evidence we have that his true motives might be a little bit different from his stated motives, and why there's a difference between the two. So yeah, this video is going to be focusing on Josh's purpose, what he's trying to achieve with his channel, what are his aims, his objectives, and is there any grounds for his claims that his means, which a lot of people have criticized, the way that he is going about it, is there any evidence to say that he's justified in using the methods that he uses? Is he actually achieving his objectives? And is he having a positive impact? And I'm going to just give my own thoughts on that. And please bear in mind, this video is purely based on my interpretation of the situation. I'm in no way saying that what I am talking about here is the last word on the situation. It isn't. It's simply my perspective. I'm just simply being a critical voice, which I think is very important. But you are, of course, welcome to have your own opinions and perspectives on the situation that might be completely different from mine. I just am presenting these ideas to you for you to think about. I say this in every video that I've done about Josh so far, and I'm going to say it again in this video. My purpose in doing these videos is not to belittle Josh or tear him down or I'm not trying to get him cancelled. I'm not trying to get him taken off YouTube. I'm not trying to bring him down a peg or two, which ironically is what he says he's trying to do to the family vloggers that he talks about. But I'm not trying to do that with Josh. I'm trying to provide a much needed critical perspective, so that so that there is balance in this discussion, so that we're not just always taking Josh's word for what he's doing and why he's doing it. It's so important to have other ways of looking at the situation, and unfortunately Josh himself doesn't seem to recognize that. But that shouldn't stop those of us who have something to say from voicing our opinions. So let's talk about Josh's objectives a little bit. Let's talk about what he says his objectives are. We've talked about the techniques that he uses, why they are problematic and harmful and dangerous. And now I want to look at, what is he trying to achieve? Josh says that his objectives are to stop the exploitation of children, to stop parents of these children on family vlogs from making money from their children. And then another objective that he gives is he claims to be about wanting to make the average woman feel better about herself. And so that's why he's very critical of women who have artificially enhanced their appearance in some way. He talks about preferring sort of normal looking women, natural beauty, women who have like curvier figures, and his stated objective with that is to help normal women to realize that a lot of the influencers and mommy bloggers that they see are like heavily made up. They've had plastic surgery, Botox, whatever you want to call it, and to help normal women to see that these women are actually fake looking and that it's not realistic, and he says he's claiming to try to help normal women to feel better about themselves. As a woman, I have a lot of problems with that objective of his. It kind of, at first glance, it sounds like a positive mission, but I think it's a little bit darker. I think it's a little bit nastier than that, to be honest. So those are the two objectives I'm going to look at in this video. Josh might have other reasons for doing what he does. I don't know. I don't watch all of his videos. In fact, I've said that I haven't watched his stuff in a long time simply because I can't. I can't listen to the nastiness that he comes out with. It's too uncomfortable and unpleasant for me. So I've stayed away from his content for a little bit now. So I'm going based on the two objectives that I've heard him talking about, and that's what I'm going to focus on in this video. So let's talk first about his mission of trying to get family vlogs kind of cancelled, or at least for them to stop using their children. I can't find any compelling evidence, Josh, that this objective is actually being achieved. Josh himself will tell you that there are a lot of people whose eyes have been opened by watching his content, that he says he's making good progress and good headway on this mission of having children taken off the internet. I have my doubts, and I'll tell you why. First of all, these families are making a lot of money from what they're doing, and although I also have a huge problem with them doing so on the basis of the private lives of their children and the using their children's images, I think that's totally wrong. I completely agree with Josh about that. But at the same time, many of these families really have no other way of making the kind of income that they are making from their family vlogs. They're, often, if they were to stop doing family vlogging, it really begs the question, what would they do instead? And are they just going to, give up that income that they're making simply because someone like Josh is bullying them online? I highly doubt it. I think the only way that it's going to change really meaningfully, well, there are two ways it could change meaningfully. The first, obviously, is if laws get passed to prohibit the use of children and children's private lives and children's information, and just that if laws get passed that kind of severely restrict the way in which people can use children in videos and in online content. And I think that's a change that a lot of us would love to see. We would love to see children being more protected by the law in this whole sphere of social media, whether it be YouTube or Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, whatever channel you want to think about. I think many of us would like to see the law protect children in these families much the same way as child actors are being protected by the law. Even there, the law can only do so much. People find all kinds of ways, when money is involved, people find all kinds of ways to get around the law and to, unfortunately children do still get exploited, and it's terribly sad, but I think at least passing the laws is a really great first step to kind of force people to behave in more ethical and moral ways when it comes to making money from their children's image and their children's lives. So having laws passed is a meaningful way that this will be able to begin to be addressed. Someone like Josh, who kind of has this vigilante style to the whole issue, is not going to bring about meaningful change when you're talking about people's income. If they don't have to give up what they're doing, it's going to be a lot easier for them to just block out someone like Josh than it is for them to just change and cave into the bullying. And you really have to ask yourself, if you have to bully someone into changing their ways, is that meaningful change? I would argue not. And the second way that the problem could be addressed in a meaningful way is if audiences themselves just simply stopped giving their engagement and viewing time to these family channels. And I don't know how realistic that is. I think there'll probably always be some kind of a niche market where people are interested in taking a look into the private lives of these families. However, and what is apparent is that family vlogs are on the way out. They're steadily declining in popularity and success. People are kind of waking up to the issues with exploiting children on their own. It's the Dad Challenge podcast. Josh is not kind of a pioneer in this arena as much as he likes to put himself forward as that. He is simply capitalizing on an awakening that is already happening, I think. People are evolving, and people's views and preferences are evolving, and I really hope that there comes a time when we don't get the same sort of, we as a society, I'm talking in general terms, that we don't get the same kind of entertainment value from digging and prodding into other people's private lives. And I would hope that income streams for that kind of thing will eventually dry up. What adults do with their lives and with their own privacy and content, of course, is completely up to them. If an adult wants to put their entire private life online, I think it's a terrible idea. I think there are a lot of problems that come with that, but that's up to them. That's their prerogative. It's obviously not right to impose that on a child and force that kind of life on a child when they have no way of consenting or not consenting to it. And so I really hope that we as a society wake up to that, and we just simply stop giving our social currency to that sort of content, and that we as the viewers and as the consumers step in to protect children by just simply stepping away, because the way that viewers are supporting those family channels is through engagement, is through taking all this interest in those people's lives. And whether Josh realizes it or not, he is a part of that whole world, because he is fueling the interest that people feel in these families, in these children, and he's actually not helping them to get the privacy they need. If anything, he is generating more interest and more kind of invasion into their lives by encouraging people to criticize and scrutinize and bully these families. If Josh honestly thinks that he is doing anything to decrease the amount of interest that people feel, I mean, he's delusional. People are simply going to be more fascinated and more entertained with what these families and parents and children are up to through the kind of ridiculous roasting and bullying and snarking that Josh perpetuates on his channel. I've talked about this in my last video. There's not a lot of compassion and empathy that shines through in the comment section of Josh's videos and in Josh's supporters. You don't see a lot of self-awareness and true kind of concern for the privacy of these children coming through. To me, it's always much more about coming down really hard on the parents and bullying those women and trying to rip them apart. And whatever you might think of them as people, you've really got to ask yourself, how is this helping the ultimate cause of protecting these kids? And so I don't believe that what Josh is doing is effective. He might, to give him his due, there might be the odd person who finds some of his earlier content and, during those times when he still talked a lot about the actual problems associated with family bloggers, instead of the intense drama that he seems, that he seems focused on now. In the early days, he was still talking about the problems of family blogging, and if people find that earlier content, perhaps there is a chance that they hadn't considered it from that perspective. And perhaps he might change the odd person's mind, but overall I think all he's doing is he's creating a whole new level of drama and a whole new world in which all of this is playing out on social media on a grand scale. And Josh is benefiting from that financially, and so are these family vlog channels. I mean, it's like a symbiotic relationship at this point. And that is kind of like a good lead in to what I wanted to talk about next, which is, are Josh's true motives the same as what he says his motives are? So let's talk first about the whole issue of getting children off the internet, and then after that I'm going to talk about his mission of helping normal women to feel better about themselves, because I have some thoughts about that. So let's talk first about the whole issue of getting children off the internet. I've already spoken now about how I don't think Josh's methods are very effective. There are much more effective solutions that would actually bring about the change that Josh says he wants. And if Josh was throwing all his efforts and finances behind things like getting laws passed, or getting people to stop engaging with the family vlogs altogether, then I might give Josh more credit, because those two solutions would actually bring about some kind of positive change. But instead, Josh is just fueling the drama, and that kind of begs the question, what is he really after? What are his true intentions? What are his true objectives? I think it's pretty clear to anyone who has two eyes at this point, and who has been watching Josh for a little while, that there are a couple of things going on. First of all, Josh has put himself forward as some kind of white knight, savior kind of figure. And this is one of the red flags of someone who's creating an echo chamber, by the way, which is what I'll talk about in my next video. So he's put himself forward as like a unique and special figure in this fight against child exploitation. He's always very quick to make sure he gets credit for anything good that he supposedly has done, and he is always the first to toot his own horn and to talk about how great he is at what he does, and there's no humility there with him at all, really. So I think this begs the question, is Josh in this for the recognition and the feeling of self-importance and validation? And to me, it's very clear that is part of it for him. He, in my perception of him anyway, it's clear to me that he is struggling with feelings of low self-esteem and feelings of needing to feel relevant and needing to feel important and needing to feel like some kind of hero. It came through very strongly for me when I was listening to him talking about his time with the church, and it came through very strongly when I was listening to him talking about trying to collaborate with other content creators, and anytime he talks about the relationships he has with people, he's so quick to let you know how important the people that he knows are. How this one is such an expert and this one is so, important, and like he wants to be connected with these other influential people, and he wants to make sure other people know that he's connected to these influential people. That came through very strongly for me every time I heard him talk about any friend or relationship that he's had. He really needs that recognition. He needs that feeling of being an important person, being the go-to person, and knowing all the right people as well, and being the person with the inside scoop. So, and for someone like him who, grew up with very little, someone who was bullied, someone who was abused, someone who just probably grew up feeling like they always were clawing for that validation and really trying to scratch around to feel seen and important, you can understand why this would be so appealing. The idea of having this massive big channel on YouTube, feeling as if you're on this important mission, having people tell you how important you are. All of this is going to feed that void inside. And I think it's sad that Josh himself seems to have limited awareness of what's going on here. He doesn't seem to be very conscious that that's driving him. But it's very clear to me and to other people as well. So I think that's one part of Josh's true motives. It's this needing to feel like the hero, this needing to feel important, this needing to feel very relevant, needing credit from other people, needing fans, needing an audience who all look up to him. I think the second motive that we need to talk about, which is clearly very powerful for Josh, is the financial incentive. You can't get away from this, no matter what Josh might want to say. It's just absolutely inescapable when you look at a channel like his, who that feeds off drama and has done so for a long time. It's, I'm going to list some of the reasons why I think Josh is in it for the money, primarily. And I don't think any of these can actually be denied or refuted in any way. If you go to any of his videos, the very first thing that, this description part of any of his videos, you'll see several ways that Josh lists of, in addition to his AdSense revenue from YouTube and the revenue he gets from his other social media, he has a lot of other ways that he expects his audience to contribute. He's got a Buy Me a Coffee link, he's got a Patreon, he's got a channel membership, he's got merchandise, which is really, not very impressive, to say the least. I'm not being nasty when I say that. I'm just saying it's like his merchandise is very plain, and yet like he shamelessly plugs it on his channel. I mean, I don't know what else you can really call that except a kind of a desperate bid for extra money. And I don't like to see it. I don't like that sort of thing at all. It always makes me question that person's motives. You know, what are they really trying to do? They've put hardly any effort into this merchandise. They're just constantly asking people to contribute more money to what? I mean, his wife is studying to be a nurse, which is awesome. Josh has been very open about the fact that he's been able to use the money he has gained from his success on YouTube to pay for his wife's studies. Okay, great, but then why are you pushing this financial part so hard? You know, it's buy me a coffee, join my Patreon, buy my merch. It's all the things that he criticizes these vloggers for. Josh does the same thing himself. He also expects to be paid for doing very little. Come on, people. You know, the hypocrisy is right there. Okay. I must say it also rubbed me the wrong way. Every time Josh would talk about something in his supposed fight to get children off the internet, anything that involved actually spending any money, Josh would like moan and complain for half the video about how much it would cost. I can give 2 examples of that, just from the limited amount that I looked into this. The one time was he was talking about buying the analytics for family vlog channels from Social Blade. And apparently, I mean, it does cost money. It's like any service, you have to pay for it. And I gather it was, tens or maybe hundreds of dollars to buy these analytics. And Josh was just going on and on and on about how much it costs to buy these analytics, and yet that's where he gets all his content from. It's all about going into these family channels analytics and seeing who's watching the videos, and yet Josh is moaning about having to pay for that information. And he was talking about starting a GoFundMe or a separate account so that people could donate to him buying the analytics that he could use for his videos. I mean, come on now. If Josh is making the sort of money that I'm sure he is making and that he claims to be making, why can he not just pay for those analytics himself? Why does he expect his fans to shell out for that, in addition to all the other ways that he wants his fans to support him financially? I mean, that really rubbed me up the wrong way. So that was the one example. I mean, another example was I think he had been falsely accused by a couple of these mommy bloggers of doing a really horrific thing. And I agree, like, that was terrible. That's one occasion where I really felt for Josh. It must be awful to have a criminal accusation leveled against you publicly, especially the kind of criminal accusation that these 2 mommy bloggers made. The one was Shannon Rose and the other one was Love Meg. They accused him of doing something really awful with no evidence at all, which is terrible, and I feel for Josh. And people were encouraging him to defend himself legally. And I mean, which Josh should have perhaps seriously considered. But Josh he was talking about getting his fans to pay for his legal costs. He wanted to start a GoFundMe, to pay for an attorney to help him kind of hit back at these family bloggers who had accused him of doing this awful thing. And I just think, okay, like, Josh, this is not your fans' responsibility. This is not for your audience to pay for. This is this is your personal issue. this is the risk that you take putting yourself out there on YouTube like this and going after people. You run the risk of perhaps getting into some legal bother, and you can't ask your audience to pay for that. I mean, come on. I was very put off by that, and it seems as if any time Josh runs into any kind of expenses associated with what he's doing on YouTube, he expects his audience to shell out to pay for them, and I have a problem with that. I really do. There was an instance where he claimed to have made a donation to the Gabby Petito Foundation. You know, through the videos that he did about her, he made a lot of money from that, and the Radiant Brit called Josh out about it. She was pretty vocal in saying, you know, Josh, she claimed to have made a donation to the Gabby Petito Foundation. I can't find it. What happened with that? And it was kind of a year later, Josh produced a receipt of a donation that he made. And he blurred out the amount, so we don't know how much he actually donated. It could have been $50, it could have been $100, it could have been $1,000, we don't know. But what we do know is that it's very unlikely that all the money that he got from those videos was actually donated to that foundation. He would have profited financially. And if not, he would have shown us the amount that he donated to that foundation. So, you know, this is another thing that tends to raise the eyebrows of people like me. We can also, if we're going to talk about Josh's financial motives, we can also talk about the fact that when Josh, you know, in the earlier days of his channel, one of the objectives that he had was to talk about the problems with modern Christianity and with churches, and this is clearly something that he felt passionately about, and I've spoken before about how I would have loved to see this kind of content from him. I think it's such an important topic, and Josh really had a very kind of real and authentic take on the whole situation, and he had an inside track on this issue, and I would have loved to have seen him talk about it more. But as soon as Josh started talking about Micah Stouffer a few years ago, he very quickly realized that it was a more profitable subject to be talking about. And so the whole direction of this channel veered away from talking about the problems with church and Christianity, and he started talking about family bloggers, because that drove a lot of traffic to his channel, and his channel grew massively as soon as he started talking about these family bloggers. And I thought that was really sad, not only because I would have liked to have seen more of the content about the church and, you know, Josh's experience as pastor, and him bringing light to all those issues that he talked about through his experiences with the church. Not only because I would have liked to have seen that content, but also because it was really sad for me to see someone like Josh become so corrupted by the views and the money that he was making talking about family blogging. It's one thing to know that money and power corrupts, and it's another thing to actually see it happening to someone that you had high hopes for. And I did. When I first started watching Josh's channel, the Dad Challenge podcast, I had high hopes for him. I thought, this is someone who has experienced a lot of trauma. This is someone who's gone through a lot, and he has a lot to share, and a lot of kind of, he's open enough to be able to bring a lot of awareness to a lot of these issues, and it was very sad for me to see how he just started chasing further and further down the drama rabbit hole, you know, because it was the most profitable, and it is very obvious that that's what's happened. It's dubious, in my opinion, how much of that is actually a passion project for him. To me, the snarking, what he calls snarking, and what to me is just plain bullying, schoolyard bullying, and just plain being kind of mean on a very childish and superficial level. That has become such a huge part of what he does on YouTube now, and I don't imagine that you go to bed at night after having done stuff like that. I don't think you go to bed at night feeling very good about yourself. You feel kind of somewhere deep inside, you feel kind of ugly and dirty if you've spent all day speaking about people like that. And I can imagine that's kind of how Josh feels, and he uses all kinds of fancy ways to justify this to himself because he somehow has to convince himself that he's still a good person. And I think that he probably also justifies it to himself that he's able to provide for his family, and that, you know, the money is what he's doing it for right now. That's what I believe. That's my opinion. I would love to be proved wrong. I hope that Josh is truly misguided, and that he is, you know, that there is a chance for him to turn around. But at this point, I firmly believe that he is being corrupted by the money he's making on YouTube. And I think what's so ironic is there is a clip of him talking about how money corrupts, and I believe he has a quote from the Bible in this clip. Cold Tea Queen has the clip on one of her videos about him, and so I highly recommend checking out her channel and her videos about Josh. But he's actually talking about how power and money corrupts, and it corrupts everybody. And I think it's so ironic, the fact that Josh is actually recorded saying this about how money and power corrupts, and it has this ability to just turn good people into, to completely overthrow their morals. And yet Josh himself can't see how that is happening to him. So let's move on to Josh's other objective, which he says is about making ordinary women feel better about themselves. And I have a lot of things to say about that. Firstly, Josh is making a lot of assumptions about his audience by even having that kind of objective. He's making assumptions that his audience don't wear makeup, or, you know, have plastic surgery or Botox or hair extensions or fake eyelashes or any of the things that the people he criticizes in his videos do. How does Josh know that? How does he know that the women in his audience actually do feel badly about themselves? He's making a lot of assumptions about how women feel about themselves, and also about what women are and aren't aware of. I think, you know, many of us who've grown up around social media for a while have become wise to the dangers to your self-esteem that, you know, that can happen if you spend a lot of time on social media. In fact, it's been quite a few years now that I haven't actually been on Facebook news feed at all. I have a Facebook account, but I'm rarely on it, and I don't actually scroll through other people's posts at all, because I noticed that just simply being around a lot of the kind of perfectly curated and overly toxically positive content didn't actually make me feel so great, and it never occurred to me to think, okay, well, I'm going to make myself feel better by kind of bringing these people down a peg or two, because that wouldn't make me feel better, and I wouldn't actually achieve anything. Instead, what I did is I just removed myself from that content as soon as I noticed that it was actually having a negative effect on me. And here again is where I just think Josh is so misguided. He's encouraging women who feel badly about themselves by looking at like perfect women on YouTube or Instagram or Facebook or whatever. He's encouraging them to kind of take those women down a few pegs and, you know, tease them, bully them and snark on them and to help them feel better about themselves. How on earth does that make any sense? How does, you know, cutting someone else down, this is like I said, this is primary school level morals and basic human kind of interactions 101. This is how you learn to deal with jealousy and comparison as an adult, by developing yourself and taking care of yourself, not by tearing someone else down. That does not achieve what you are looking for. You're never going to feel better about yourself in the long term by snarking on or criticizing or bullying other people. You know, if you look at another woman and you think, wow, like she looks really perfect, she looks really beautiful, you look at her hair, look at her makeup, her face, her body, her clothes, I wish I had all of that. You're never going to feel better about yourself by being snarky and critical of that person. The way to feel better about yourself is to really look at your own life and say, okay, what am I unhappy about? What can I change? What can I do to make me feel better? How can I love myself more? How can I improve my life? How can I improve things I'm unhappy about in order to feel better about yourself? That is where the true and lasting sense of satisfaction and happiness and contentment comes from. It's never going to come from trying to cut the other person down. A much healthier way of looking at that is to see that other person in perspective. You know, you might want to say to yourself, okay, well, yes, she is beautiful, and isn't that wonderful that she takes such good care of herself? What can I learn about how to do my makeup or how to dress in a particular, you know, if I admire the way she dresses, how can I learn from her? How can I get tips about how she dress, you know, about how to dress from her? And also let me not assume that everything is perfect in her life, because I'm sure it's not, because we're all human and we all have things that happen to us. And we all have, you know, our troubles and our cross to bear in life. So a much healthier way of looking at it is just to place the whole thing in a more realistic perspective. But the answer is never to bully that person and try and cut them down, because that's just going to turn you into an ugly and nasty person, and it shows your own resentment and jealousy so clearly when you do that kind of thing. You know, you're much better off looking at what those feelings are really saying about you and about how you feel about your own life. That's how I have learned to deal with any kind of feelings of jealousy and comparison. I know anytime I feel that way, it's a call to look inside myself and figure out what, you know, which parts of my life are calling for my attention. And yeah, so I have a big problem with Josh promoting the idea of bullying and snark and meanness and nastiness and unkindness and cutting people down and taking them down a peg or two in his language. I have a big problem with people using that as a way to make themselves feel better. And I think it says a lot about Josh that he gives himself permission to do that. I also, you know, what's also interesting to me is he ends every video with this weird little ritual. I mean, I find it a little bit strange. It doesn't do anything for me. If other people like it, then, you know, that's fine. But he ends every video with this ritual where he gets his audience to take a deep breath in. And then he tells them, you're beautiful, you're amazing, have an awesome day, whatever, you know, that sort of little spiel at the end of every video. And I always find this so ironic because in many cases, he spent the entire video telling a woman how she's not all that, and she's not everything, she's not as great as she thinks she is, and who does she think she is, and she's not as hot and beautiful as she's portraying herself to be. And yet then he wants his audience to trust him and to feel like it's sincere when he says, oh, you're amazing and beautiful. I mean, first of all, as I mentioned earlier, Josh doesn't actually know who his audience is, what they look like. For all he knows, his audience could be composed of people who look exactly like the ones in the videos that he makes. He doesn't actually know that his audience is someone he would or would not consider beautiful and amazing. How is that compliment at the end of every video supposed to mean anything? How's it supposed to hold any kind of weight? It's just, I always thought, like, this is just kind of blowing smoke up his audience's arse. I mean, that's just all it sounded like to me. He's basically saying to them, this little spiel at the end of the video about you're beautiful, you're amazing, never forget that. He's basically saying, forget everything, gloss over everything that I've just said in my video where I've been really nasty about a woman. And then I'm just going to do this bait and switch where I tell you that you're actually beautiful and amazing because you support me. These other, mommy bloggers don't support me and so they're bad. But you're beautiful and amazing because you do support me. I mean, it's like none of it means anything. It's all completely insincere. And so for me, I just see Josh as like someone who's not an authority on women's feelings and the way that women actually view themselves and the way that they view other women, and B, as just someone who's very disingenuous and not someone whose opinion can actually be trusted. I think if Josh truly cared about women's mental health and about raising the self-esteem of women in his audience, he'd spend a lot less time on snarking and teasing and bullying, and he'd spend a lot more time on actually giving kind of helpful tips and helpful strategies that women can use to feel better about themselves and to improve their own lives. As I mentioned earlier, it's not effective to try and make yourself feel better by cutting someone else down. There's always going to be a more beautiful person than you. There's always going to be someone richer and who has a more attractive spouse, someone who has better hair, a better body, a better face, better clothes. You've got to the only way to feel better about yourself is to invest in yourself and to develop yourself into someone that you can feel proud of and that you can love and feel happy with when you wake up in the morning. It's never going to be the answer to just constantly be grabbing at other women and trying to pull them down. It doesn't work. And I think he's also massively doing a disservice to the intelligence of the women in his audience by kind of implying that they don't understand that what they're looking at, a lot of it is not real. I think most of us do understand when we see people with false eyelashes and people with hair extensions and people who've had plastic surgery and Botox and lip fillers and all the rest of it. I think a lot of us do understand that that's not actually natural. It is something that someone's paid for, and that if we had the money, we'd probably be able to pay for it too. I mean, I think, a lot of his audience are quite capable of seeing that for themselves. You don't need to spend your whole video kind of pointing all these things out. It's not necessary or helpful. It really just makes you look like an asshole. And I'm sorry that that's such a negative way to end this video, but that's where I'm gonna leave things for now. In my next video, I'm going to talk about how Josh is a really good example of an echo chamber, and I'm going to break down some of the elements that go into creating an echo chamber so that we can look out for these in the future. We can analyze Josh as an example, and the Dad Challenge podcast as an example of someone who's created an echo chamber. And we're going to look at all the different factors that make up someone in an echo chamber and why that's so dangerous and problematic. So I'll bring out that video. I'm hoping, in the next few days, in the not too distant future anyway. Yes, until then, take care of yourselves, and thank you for watching, and thank you for listening to what I have to say on these topics.